Hi, everybody. So today, my talk also isn't super technical. It's more about process. So I'm a cloud security architect at T. Rowe Price, which basically means that I work with teams as they come onto the cloud, specifically from a security point of view. And what I found over time, so basically when a new team says, well, we want to get onto the cloud, we look at their architecture, we inspect it, we give them feedback. And what I found over time, doing this for about 9 months now, is that the way people were looking at security, they were getting a lot of things confused. You know, they were confusing networking with data encryption, and, well, I don't need data encryption because my network channel is secure. And I'm like, no, not necessarily the same thing. So what I like to do is kind of sort of present it in a completely different context, which is the context of home security. Okay? So there are 3 questions that I think if you ask yourself these questions, it'll help you a lot. Okay? It'll help you think about what your application does and where your potential vulnerabilities are. So the first question, if I can get this thing to go forward. Oh, play. So,
there.
Okay. So the first question is, what kind of compute do you have? So the analog here is, do you want to rent or do you want to buy? Rent being serverless, buy meaning you build your own cluster. Each one has their pros and cons. Again, I'm not saying do this versus do that. I'm just saying these are things to consider. Okay? So if you want to build your mansion, your huge EMR cluster, or whatever that happens to be, you own it, right? Which means if it leaks, you have to fix it, which means you have to patch it, which means you have to monitor it. You have to do all these things by yourself. But if that's what you need, then maybe that's what you got to do. The comparison would be rent, which is serverless, right? A lot of people talk about serverless, and it's a very good technology, but again, it has its own things, right? When you go with the serverless framework, you're basically accepting what the vendor is giving you, warts and all, good and bad. So again, think about it from a security point of view. You don't really control where your compute is. They literally give you a small house for you to do your work, and then when you're done with your work, house is gone. Again, just think about how you want to handle your compute. Second concept, how easy is it to access your application? Are you a small little house on a remote island, or are you public facing to the internet? Each one is going to have ways that you want to handle and control and access. If you're doing a portal for public, obviously you need to be publicly accessible. That means you have to think about your subnets, you have to think about your VPCs, you have to think about your security groups. Also think about which parts of your application you need to expose and which parts you could put into a separate subnet protected by more security groups that you don't need to expose, right? So again, think about how much you can isolate and what needs to be public facing. Okay, did I miss anything? Final point here is always make sure your traffic's encrypted. All traffic should be encrypted. Final question to ask yourself. How valuable is your data? Does it have a high street value? Social security numbers, credit card info, bank statements? Or is it your 8-track connection from the 70s, right? Again, for each mode, you want to put in the appropriate controls, the appropriate encryption. Everything doesn't have to be PKI. There's many ways to encrypt. There are many modes of encryption. But again, think about how valuable is your data and what extent you want to take to protect it. Thank you.